Hey guys, I'm going to do a follow-up video after I made the one last week about basically how people are engaging with each other, especially black people and white people. But this time I'm going to focus in on critical race theory and part of the problem with that. Another part being maybe what is it that people really are having a problem with? And I'll start with some news that I've been looking at recently, especially over the 4th of July weekend. So there was almost 100 people shot in Chicago over the 4th of July weekend. Not the month of July so far. One weekend there was almost 100 people shot. 18, I think it was, killed. Some were kids. And then today I saw another news story, and I can't remember what area it was in, but a two-year-old was shot. Somebody got out of a car and started shooting. The dad got hit, and so did the kid. So you can tell I'm going right into kind of what I'm wanting to address by this, because I think this whole cultural thing that's going on right now, this whole political thing, if we look at some facts about what's going on, maybe we can come to some kind of consensus about what's really happening, and what are our perspectives, and are they in line with reality or actuality. And I brought up those statistics about Chicago because that's dominantly black on black crime, dominantly. And last year, the entire country got in an uproar when a criminal was killed. And it wasn't just that a criminal was killed. I think primarily, and I'm going to say some things and it might offend people, but if we don't all start getting a little bit honest about what we think, this conversation is not going anywhere. So I'm going to talk about my assumptions here as well. It's the fact that it was a white cop that done that was the issue. Because the value of the life. So I'm calling BS for a lot of people right now, on the left especially. And even those who are black who say that Black Lives Matter. Yet I have not seen an uproar about the innocent people that's getting killed every single week that are black. I mean, a large number of people. This is not an isolated thing. That's a high number for the 4th, but it happens every week, and there's no uproar over it. There's no people marching all in the streets talking about the value of the life of kids and innocent people who are getting shot, because a lot of it's gang members doing this kind of thing. But still, regardless of whether it's gang or not, it's black people doing it to other black people. The victims are black people. But the whole country's not in an uproar. I happen to have, on YouTube, I get feeds and it tells me stories like that, some of the things I'm subscribed to. But I keep wondering, why is it not a national problem with this many innocent people getting shot every single week? Supposedly, what we hear from the president is it's white supremacy that's the biggest problem. What about the people that's losing their lives? What about people that's losing business, that these communities this is happening in? The businesses cannot flourish in those communities. Nobody wants to go to those communities. What's happening with that? And like I just said a minute ago, I mean, the truth of it is it was a white cop that done that with Floyd. Obviously, that was a problem. Now, there's no justification for what happened there. But it was because it was a white guy. I mean, we're going to have to acknowledge that. And I'm going to refer back and forth to this critical race theory thing, because I've heard this on the news as well. So we don't need to whitewash our history. We need to tell the truth about what has happened. You know, we already learn about oppression of natives and black people in this country in history class already. So nobody's whitewashing history. The problem with critical race theory is there's some assumptions in there and mind reading going on about how people are today. What are people's mentality? You realize you have to be able to read somebody's mind to say that they're automatically prejudiced or racist or think that they're better. You have to mind read to do that. So that's an assumption. I'm going to give an assumption right now on my end that some of this that's going on has to do with ego. There's no way that you can be an entire race of people that has, in this country, now all colors of people have been slaves all over the world. But in this country specifically, it was black people that were slaves. How could you not have an ego problem with that? So my assumption is that some of this has to do with ego, because nobody's saying, not well, there's some saying things, but the whole country's not in an uproar with innocent people that are black that are getting killed. So it's only brought up, and it's not police brutality they're talking about. They're talking about a white person doing it more than anything. Or can they legally do it? But this has to do with, and I've heard this, we want to make sure things like that don't happen again. So we have to bring up that, white people shouldn't be able to do this or do that. Or they need to have a concept about themselves, about their role in history, and even the mind reading part of now you're automatically racist because you're white, or capable of oppressing groups of people. Throw a little fact in here, and this is ironic I'm saying this, but people say, well, black people can't be racist because you don't have the numbers. It'd have to be the majority to be able to make it racist. Think about this. In South Africa, there was a minority of white people that came up with these laws and regulations about where people could live and things like that. It was a minority. They were exercising racism as a minority group in South Africa. So that argument don't work. You can't say racism can't exist with a minority, because it has and does. So that's been the argument in schools. They try to say, well, black people can't be racist. You can be prejudiced but not racist. So look, a minority can also be racist and create policies that affect the majority in a way that's unjust. These are the kind of things we're going to have to discuss, because critical race theory in itself is teaching people to look at themselves in a certain way. And why is that a problem? So if we're going to look backwards and say, what was the main problem that people were having in this country when it came to things like racism? Well, they were looking at a skin color, right? So right now, sorry about the noise. Right now, the left is seriously promoting teaching critical race theory, which suggests that you should look at each other by skin color and determine, what people's ideals are and what their value is based on their race. Now, wasn't this the very problem that was happening in early America when black people became the color of people who were slaves? I don't understand how that's supposed to work. You're saying we don't want to repeat history. We don't want to repeat injustices or racism. So let's come up with this thing and suppose and mind read about white people and judge completely based on race. That's exactly what was happening in early America. So the left, again, there's two cultures of people. This is the part we're gonna have to dive into and acknowledge it. my opinion, the left is using minorities, for one, to have votes, and two, use that social justice thing or racial justice thing to put people into positions of power. Because now you don't have to say, hey, I want all leftists in power. You just want to say, hey, I want to make sure there's black people or minorities in positions of power. But the left works really hard to keep black people as leftists. So that's under the guise of, hey, we're seeking racial justice, racial equity, when really what they're trying to do is put leftists in positions of power. I said this in the other video, there's tons of minorities in positions of power and influence right now. Every time you look at the news and they want to bring on somebody who's in charge of a city or a county or whatever, I don't know, 8 times out of 10 they're black. So there's leadership positions already there. But it's not that people are trying to put black people in there, they're trying to put leftists in there. And a majority of black people are leftists. Or at least the ones that are in power. Like universities, completely led by leftists. They're going to promote however they can, to get their people, their ideology in place and in play. I've bounced back and forth on some of this, and there's so much to cover here, and I'm throwing stuff out there because I want myself as well as other people to start thinking about these things and questioning these things. I just heard Major League Baseball, so they're going to spend tons of money to try to make sure they put more black people within that sport. The first question comes into my mind, because they're talking about equity, right? Equal outcomes. Is the NBA going to start putting more white people in basketball? I don't really care, because I don't watch sports, but what I do care about is equality. Equity as in outcomes, how things work out like that, and whether people put effort into it or have the skills or talent for it, that's a whole separate thing. But if you're basing it completely on diversity, then the NBA also needs to put more white people in basketball. So that's how that would work. I have absolutely no problem with interracial relationships. But I want you guys to pay attention to this when you look at the TV next time. Whenever you're watching commercials, this is another one of those 8 out of 10. I'm going to say 9 out of 10. When you see an interracial relationship on TV, is it a white guy with a black woman, or is it the opposite? My point is it's not equal. Just watch. You'll see it. I mean, the only thing that's being promoted is black men with white women. Why is that? I have to ask the question. Why is that? Some would say, well, it represents society. You guys know as well as I do, the media promotes and creates society. They create what they want to see. They create things and make them popular. They make things happen by what they promote. I'm just saying again, it looks to me like the goal, and it's not white people that they're talking about, really, not the left, because they don't talk about themselves like that. They talk about themselves as if they're up above, being what they're calling other white people. So it has to do with ideology. It has to do with thinking. And again, I'll say this, I think black people are stuck in between the right and the left. There's a battle that's been going on here and across the globe forever. As long as there's been civilization, there's been, in a sense, been a right and a left. The two different ways of looking at things. The critical race theory, again, is a way to get. This is what my assumption is, based on some of the things I just said to you. I think the goal of it is, and they teach this even at the university level, they're basically wanting white males, but it's not really white males. They're wanting white conservatives to be quiet and let other people lead. I heard this when I was in multicultural class at a master's level, and they taught it in a way they did it in a biblical way. Let me say it was almost like a salvation story. And they know most conservatives have some sort of religious background, or at least comprehend salvation as the Bible teaches it. And they teach, in a sense, that, well, when the white person understands basically that they're a sinner, when they understand that, then they can become part of the multicultural community, and in a sense be reborn when they understand that, and then they'll no longer be the outcast whenever they bring themselves into society where all they do is try to be anti-racist and try to make sure that sort of thing ain't happening. I'll ask again, because I don't see it. I mean, I know there's individual places that can happen, but systems-wise, you can't give me an example where racism's happening. And I've said this before, most conservatives don't think skin color and ideology are synonymous. And there was an assumptions, obviously, about black people a long time ago. Whatever those assumptions were, that's what critical race theory is trying to bring back again. Except now pointed toward white people. It's like some kind of circle. I mean, and there's a global thing happening to where so many things are being pushed into that racial narrative. When are we going to get it in our heads that race don't determine how you think? Obviously it can, according to, say, where you live or whatever. But it's not really race. It's your environment. It's your culture. That has something to do with how you think. So it makes me sick that critical race theory is being pushed, for one. Because underneath all that crap, any black person who has adopted that ideology, some of that, in my opinion, has to do with ego. It's a wounded ego. And how could you not have a wounded ego? I mean, you'd have to walk around in the face of people you could project, to the future and say, this group of people, if it was back then, would own my group of people. Without even thinking there was also black people who owned black people in America as slaves. That's also part of that equation. Rarely gets mentioned. The Muslim slave trade was huge, bigger than the European slave trade. I'm just saying, that was a global thing at a point in time. So, but you still have the American issue of it being solely black people who were slaves. And I get to a degree where that's, I would have a problem with it. I would have a problem, reconciling with that, coming to terms with it. But what's happening across the board, man, this has to do with right and left. It has to do with conservative or liberal, and it's an ugly thing, and it has to do with big government and limited government, that sort of thing. And there's these pieces, in this puzzle. People are able to use them. People who have influence and money. You plant that seed in people's head. They just seem to buy into it. People tend to grab right on without asking the question on the other side. Well, how is this fair in this situation if you're doing it that way? Critical thinking is just shot. I mean, it's not promoted. What to think basically is promoted. Here's what you should look at, and that's the end of the story. Now let's get on the anti-racial bandwagon. My gosh, man, like I said before, I'm in the South. I know plenty of Southerners. I have ran across very few racist people. Most people understand skin color does not determine value, and I don't know why it keeps being pushed. Except for it creates votes, and then you can run your, like I said earlier, you can run that narrative of, okay, we're going to make sure and put more black people in these positions and those positions, and make sure white people understand they need to be quiet and let other people lead. But the whole time, the leftists are really pushing, again, to have black people as leftists. Because now, hey, I'm important to this group. This group's fighting for me, supposedly. No, they're not fighting for you. They're fighting to have you in a position so you can carry, their ideology, and if it's yours and theirs, into positions of influence and power. It's a power grab. This whole freaking thing is a power grab. And are we going to move from back and forth, peeing contest over what race should be in charge? Or are we going to look at people's character, people's ideology, what actually has a success rate to it? What's actually beneficial for all of us? I mean, how are people going to value themselves in their society when they're being looked at like the crap's being thrown around right now? How are you gonna function evenly and with real consideration and dignity for yourself and other people with it going like this? I can't see that happening. So I'm really making this video for, I'm gonna say, conservatives who really don't know how to argue the point. That's some questions you can throw out there to people if you want to have those conversations. The other one is to black people who are on the fence about what ideology they actually support. What do you really want your community to look like? I know people are not going to like this one, but the cities, the most dangerous cities and the ugliest cities that are out there, are already ran by liberals and black people, for that matter. So that's not an answer. It has to do with personal responsibilities, opportunities, and your own responsibilities. I think the biggest part. People are responsible for what they do. You do have to have opportunity, obviously, and that's already in existence. So my call to this, and for people who are keep hollering about police brutality, keep hollering about racism, why don't you guys do something about these communities and neighborhoods where so many black people are shooting other black people? I mean, lots of leftist people who talk are on TV, athletes, all of you guys who want to kneel and blame white people, why don't you use some of that money and move some of those people who are innocent out of those freaking neighborhoods? Get them out of there. Let those gang members sit there and kill each other. Innocent people don't need to be getting killed. I mean, that aggravates me beyond. I don't even know where to go with that, because all this mouth running got no solutions to it whatsoever, and what you're trying to bank it on, ultimately, okay, let's call it white supremacy is the problem. We need to have more diversity. We've got plenty of diversity going on, plenty of it. What we don't have is sanity. What we don't have is real equality, where diversity includes white people, where communities can function together based on their ideologies, not over a skin color. I mean, I'm dumbfounded over what's being used right now to lead the entire country around. Dumbfounded. It makes absolutely no sense. And since I ranted here quite a bit, so I threw some things out there about critical race theory, some of my assumptions, some of the assumptions of critical race theory, obviously, mind reading for one, and my question about Black Lives Mattering. What about these innocent black people that are being killed? Kids, 2 years old and up. I mean, I don't get it. Where is all the outrage? Where's the marching? Where's the let's go tear up that entire place until these gang members get out of there? Where is that? I mean, most of the people who have been killed by white people, it's criminals involved in a criminal act. So there's a subculture within white and black America that is promoting and protecting criminals over innocent people. Now you tell me how that makes a bit of sense, to protect and promote criminals over innocent people. How backwards can you get? I mean, is that me being white that's thinking that and that's a problem? I mean, criminals are not also a product of white supremacy. I hate to break this news to you, but many gang members, they get status and plenty of money, plenty of women. It's a celebrity status, man. Come on. I mean, lots of people who are in gangs are not in it because they have to be as much as, hey, there's a lot that can come along with being in one. Some of you guys just don't know crap about it and don't understand the status that comes along with it. You know, people admire that kind of thing. Look at the TV. I mean, look at the kind of crap that's on TV and what's being promoted. So, yeah, I've ranted enough. I'm going to go ahead and stop the video. And hopefully this will promote some thinking and some discussion. If someone's mad at me, you know, if I've said something idiotic, shoot me a message and let me know that you disagree with it or you agree with it. Because, honestly, I had a teacher say this to me, actually as a black professor in the multicultural class. He said this about me in the class because I raised questions and asked him things that everybody else in the class just sat there. And he said, you know, if more people would go ahead and be honest like you're being, we'd get somewhere. And you know, I had people in my class even would come up to me after and say, you know, you're saying things that the rest of us want to say, but we're scared to. If you're already thinking it, you know, and it comes from using your own logic and weighing things against other situations, you know, trust that. That's a God-given thing that we all have, is that whistleblower logic. You can compare things and see, is it consistent? Does it make sense? Can you apply it in another situation the same way? We have to do that. We have to use some sense here. And why do you think, again, that why do people want an America that like it was founded on a principle of small government? Why do they want that? Because you're told how to think and how to live in other countries. This is what we're trying to avoid. We are in a position where people are equal and do have equal opportunities in many situations. And we're about to piss all that away because the left wants to have power. Think about that.